Today is a very important day for training camp for the Detroit Lions, as it is the first of 2 joint practices against the Detroit Lions. There's a lot riding on these practices for certain players, and we're going to talk about which ones absolutely need to perform while we're going into this episode. So stay tuned.
What are we? What makes us what we are and what we're going to be? It's grit. It's what we started with last year, guys. Doesn't matter if you have 1 ass cheek and 3 toes. I will beat your ass.
Can definitely compete with the big dogs.
10-5 end zone touchdown Detroit Lions.
You guys are unbelievable, man. I'm telling you.
We are driven by Detroit.
Hello, Detroit Lions fans, and welcome on back to yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. I'm your host, David T. Pike, and as always, we're diving on in. Welcome back, friends. Welcome back, one and all. I hope y'all are having a great day. We're going to talk about in this episode which Lions players everybody is particularly looking forward to and is eager to see perform in these joint practices that are coming up. And in today's episode, we're going to be talking about the ones that I think are the most highest in terms of eagerness that Lions fans want to see perform. Now, obviously, we're not going to talk about every single Lions player because obviously, Lions fans want to see all Lions players perform. We're going to be talking about the ones that I think are in the, how should I say this? It's not necessarily that they have to perform for every single one, but there's a lot of anticipation for these guys. And the anticipation is surrounding different kinds of aspects. For some, it's like, okay, we really need to see something good out of this player. Or for others, it's like, okay, somebody opposite of them is also really good. We want to see how they do opposite of that player. Or we're trying to see how this player or how a group of players is going to perform against said opposition, and if that's a good measuring stick, a good litmus test, if you will, going into the season. So there's different parameters or different references around all these players that I'm going to talk about. And I will obviously explain which ones I think apply to said players. And obviously, for the Giants fans, they're obviously going to be doing the same thing for their players when they're doing their assessments, if you will, for how they're performing against our players. So again, this is a really big joint practice, and it's going to have a lot of impact. It's going to be talked about quite a bit over the next couple of days. But without further ado, I'm going to give you guys my Lions players that I think a lot of Lions fans ought to be paying attention to. So let's talk about the first one here. The first 2 Lions players that I think everybody really needs to pay attention to is the rookie cornerbacks, Arnold and Rakestraw. Why? Because they're going to be obviously going up against the wide receiver that was drafted by the New York Giants. If I recall correctly, it was at number 6, and that's Malik Nabers. And if I also recall correctly, I think Nabers was the first wide receiver off the board, if I recall correctly. I could be wrong, but I'm about 90% certain I'm right. Either way, regardless of that, the point of the matter is that if you've been paying attention to what has been going on in the Giants training camp, which I have been kind of intermittently because I'm like, okay, I know we're going to be having joint practices against them, so I'm kind of keeping my ear to the ground, kind of paying a little bit of attention here. From what I've been hearing, Nabers has been absolutely been tearing it up for the Giants training camp. He's been very impressive. He's been consistent. He's constantly making good plays. So that is something that the Giants fans, the Giants organization, has been really excited about. And they're really excited about how that's going to translate once obviously the regular season gets into effect. But the same is also true for us Lions fans. We have been equally excited about what we've been seeing out of our rookie cornerbacks in Arnold and Rakestraw, our 2 first draft picks, in the 2024 NFL Draft. Now, obviously, out of those 2, the one that has gotten the more, I would say, news articles or the more of a news fest would probably be Rakestraw because let's call it for what it is. The last 3 practices prior to the weekend break, before the Lions made their transition or they moved out to New York to actually do these joint practices with the Giants, Rakestraw had 3 straight practices where he garnered interceptions. Now, that's impressive for a veteran. For a rookie, that is damn impressive because it's like, listen, for a rookie to have that capability for 3 straight days to come up with interceptions, that shows 2 main things about that rookie. 1, they are in the right place at the right time, and number 2, they have a knack for getting the football. And for a rookie to have that already, that is something that is really exciting for Lions fans because let's understand something here. The Lions over the last couple of years, we've had dreadful freaking passing secondaries because we've always been trying to do some sort of patchwork job, and it's never quite worked. This is the first offseason where Brad Holmes has actually invested draft picks to fix the problem, and it already looks like that by actually doing that, our secondary is in a really good spot. Because not only do we have Arnold and Rakestraw, we also have Carlton Davis, and we also have Amik Robertson. We have a very good secondary that is mixed with both young talent, but also veteran talent that is working together with each other. They're competitive, they're driven, and they're taking all that competitive drive to make each other better. And that's why when us Lions fans have been hearing what we've been hearing about Rakestraw and Arnold, we're really excited about what is going on for our secondary. And then when we put it in comparison with the fact that we're going into Giants training camp and we're going to be doing joint practices with them and what we've been hearing about Neighbors, it's like, okay, this is going to be a really, really good testament. This is going to be a really good test to see how Arnold and Rakestraw do in their first practice, their first, competition with a team opposite of the Detroit Lions. Because up until this point, they've only practiced against their own teammates. This is the first time they are going to practice against somebody that is not in their own uniform. So that's going to be a really big test. That's going to be something I really am going to be paying attention to. Because from what I've been hearing, like I said, Neighbors has been doing well in Giants training camp, but he's already developed a very strong chemistry with the starting quarterback, Daniel Jones. So for me, I want to see how those two, Arnold and Rakestraw, are going to do opposite in competition with Neighbors, and obviously the other wide receivers that are in Giants training camp. So that's the first group. The second group that I think all Lions fans really, really need to pay attention to is how the Lions offensive line does against the Giants defensive line. Now let me explain why I'm saying this. I do not think that the Lions' offensive line is in any need of being a checkup or is in trouble. I know that our offensive line is the only elite offensive line right now in the NFL. Virtually every damn pundit, every damn analyst has said the same thing. The Lions are the only elite offensive line right now in the NFL. Pretty much, it's the Lions' offensive line and then everybody else is underneath us. So I'm not worried about our ability to do a good job. But let's also understand this. Up until this point, the Lions have only gone against our defensive line in practice. And obviously our defensive line has been tearing it up because obviously when we have our defensive line coach in Terrell Williams, he's been doing a very good job of getting those guys coached up right, obviously being very aggressive with his techniques, hand placements, and everything else. So it's like, okay, our offensive line has been getting battle tested in practice. But that doesn't mean the Giants' defensive line is no slouch either. They've got three really good players opposite of them. They've obviously got Kayvon Thibodeau. They've obviously got Brian Burns, who they picked up this offseason. And they've also got Dexter Lawrence. They've got some really good defensive linemen. So again, I'm not saying that our offensive line is going to get overworked by the Giants' defensive line. I'm not expecting that at all. But it's going to be a very good test for our offensive line. It's going to be awesome trench warfare between our offensive line versus their defensive line. It's going to be a great test. It's going to be a great battle because it's going to encompass everything about our offense, whether it's pass protection or run protection. So again, I want to see how our offensive line does against that defensive line just because it's like, hey, it's going to be an awesome battle, and I want to see how we do. I'm not worried about our ability to handle them. I just want to see how it goes because that's where the fun really is at. So that's group number 2. Now, moving on to group number 3. I'm just going to say this right now. I know for a fact that there are Lions fans that are not going to want to hear this. And I know for a fact there are also going to be Lions fans that are going to agree with me on this. But you know what? I don't care. I've never shied away from the truth. I will not start now. And the truth of the matter is that for this joint practice that's coming up with the Giants, it is a huge, crucial time for Hendon Hooker. I'm just saying it. This training camp has been huge for Hendon Hooker's development because this is a major moment for him. But these joint practices that are coming up against the Giants and then obviously the preseason game that's coming up, these are absolutely massive. He has to take hold of these opportunities because this is going to be a huge measuring opportunity, a huge measuring stick to see where his development truly is, and thus a further indicator for where the backup quarterback job truly is between Hooker and obviously Nate Sudfeld. Because it's like, okay, at this point, I'm not going to try and sugarcoat it. Nate Sudfeld is clearly winning the backup quarterback job. He is clearly the number 2 quarterback at this point. Virtually, he's taken all the number 2 offensive reps. Hendon Hooker has not really done anything to move the needle on that. So if he really wants to start picking up ground, Hendon Hooker has got to show out in these training camp joint practices with the Giants and also in the preseason game that's coming up and all the other preseason games. Because I'm telling you this, there have been moments where Hendon Hooker has looked very, very good in practice, but they've been very brief. He's had beautiful throws, and he's also had moments where his athleticism has come out in full force. But for every, like I've said, 1 or 2 times that something like that occurs, then there's also like a couple of plays where it's like there's poor accuracy, where he's either underthrowing or overthrowing wide receivers. There's also been times where he has thrown multiple picks in practice, sometimes throwing it on the same style of play or route. And that's just the overall inconsistency that has not looked good for him. And again, I understand that this is his first full training camp. I understand, in essence, this is his rookie year. But the point of the matter is that regardless of all that, take everything else out of consideration. He is clearly not winning the number 2 job at this point. He has to take hold of this opportunity if he wants to get back into the conversation to really take the number 2 job away from Nate Sudfeld. This is going to be a big test for him, and his ability to pass it is going to have a huge impact on whether or not he's able to gain that number 2 quarterback job. So again, big opportunity for Hendon Hooker here. Big practices that are coming up for him. So that's that's player number 3. Player number 4. I'm saying this right now. One guy that has probably been the biggest surprise and pleasant surprise of the Detroit Lions training camp has got to be wide receiver Darice Fountain. Again, I love this idea that I came up with him because of his last name, Fountain. And I asked this question, is he going to continue to flow and prosper, or is he going to dry up when we get to the training camps? And it's like, okay, you take a look at what freaking Fountain has done so far in the training camp sessions for the Lions. He has been absolutely wonderful. He has been a wonderful surprise for the Detroit Lions, and he has squarely put himself in the running, in the conversation for the wide receiver number 3 job. Excuse me. Now, I'm going to say this. Has he won the job yet? Absolutely not. As we already know, Dan Campbell has put a bit of a fire underneath Donovan Peoples-Jones's butt because he's like, listen, we expect more out of you. We want to see more out of you. Not because of lack of effort, but he's just not doing enough to really give them a real good showing of what they think he has to offer. So quite plainly obvious here, the Lions want to see more competitive nature out of Donovan Peoples-Jones. That's not to say they don't like what they've seen out of Fountain, but they want to see more between everybody before they just say, hey, you know what? Fountain's already kind of won the job. It's way too early in training camp to say someone has outright won a particular job. So for Fountain, it's like, hey, if he wants to continue to separate himself from the rest of the pack, again, kind of like I just spoke with Hendon Hooker, he needs to take a hold of this opportunity in these training camp practices that are coming up against the Giants and obviously the preseason games that are coming up, and he has got to continue to ball out. He has got to continue to show out. And that is what's going to truly separate him from other guys that are trying to get into the conversation of being wide receiver number 3 to replace Josh Reynolds. But again, that is what is going to be a huge thing for me to pay attention to, is how Fountain actually performs in these training camp practices. Because if he continues to perform like he did when it was just against our Lions defensive secondary, he's going to have himself almost a shoo-in for getting that job. Because once we actually get to the preseason games, I don't expect much is going to change. But if he actually kind of falls off a little bit or things kind of change, now we've got ourselves a completely different kind of race going on here. I'm not saying that's what I expect to happen, but it's definitely something to pay attention to. So, that's player number 4. We got a few more to go here. The next group of players that we need to talk about here is the 3 caballeros, if you will, opposite of Aidan Hutchinson. And I'm talking about Marcus Davenport, I'm talking about Matthew Betts, and I'm talking about James DeProblem Houston. And the main question with this one is, who is going to shine the brightest? Because as we already know, Aidan Hutchinson, he has got his side locked down tight. He is not going anywhere. He is obviously the starter for that side. But one of the biggest questions that has plagued Lions fans this offseason is who in the hell is going to be the starter opposite of him for the other edge rushing role? And we really haven't gotten much of an answer. We really haven't gotten much of any sort of indicator on who's going to actually get that job. Now, here's the thing. The joint practices are going to be a huge indicator because, hey, if you're able to go up against, opposing talent, and obviously this is going to be first-team reps, if you're able to go up against those guys and you're able to make an impact, you're able to start separating yourself from the rest of the pack, that's going to speak volumes. And then, obviously, once we get to the preseason games, that's going to even further speak volumes. But the real problem is that every single guy, and I've said this before in other videos, every single guy has got something that is going for them and also something that's going against them. When it comes to Marcus Davenport, the thing that he's got going for him is that he's got the most experience out of all of them. But the thing that's going against him, his health. He has not been very healthy over the course of his career. All it's going to take is for him to have one injury, and that might be it for him. Whereas when you take a look at Betts, he's probably got the best health, and on top of that, he's got the best upside of everybody. But the problem with him is that he's also been shown in certain instances where, hey, the Lions can't rely on him just yet to kind of take some of that Sam outside linebacker role that they're wanting him to, so they've kind of cut back on that. So that's a little bit of a disadvantage for him. And then we take a look at Houston. Houston's probably got the best flexibility out of all of them because that guy knows how to get low better than anybody. But the problem is that opposite of Betts, he doesn't seem to have the most upside because most people just consider him a specialty pass rush. That's all he seems to know how to do. So for me, every single guy has a different way to kind of win this job, and they're all kind of vying for it at the same pace. It's really going to depend on who steps out and shines the brightest that's really going to take a hold of the running for that job. So again, for all three of those guys, it's a huge opportunity. They absolutely must hold on to it. They must find a way to win it, and it's going to be crucial for us Lions fans to see who actually starts showing out more in these joint training camp practices. We've got two more to go through. The next one is Levi Onwuzurike and Broderick Martin. Now, let's understand something here. Both of these guys have been showing out bit by bit in training camp. But the one that's really making headways is definitely Levi Onwuzurike. There is a lot of buzz surrounding him, and there's obviously good reason for it. He looks like he's fully healthy. He looks like he's on the verge of not only a comeback, but also a breakout. Because from the reports that we've been hearing about Levi is that not only is he's getting reps on the outside edge, but he is absolutely tearing it up in the middle. He's got power, he's got speed. He's starting to look like the prospect that we saw when we drafted him in the second round back in 2021. And if he continues to show that over the next couple of weeks in training camp, I'm telling you this right now, that interior defensive line for the Detroit Lions, it is going to be a nightmare for teams to try and run through because it's like, okay, Ali McNeil needs a breather? Okay, we'll put in Levi Onwuzurike. Oh, Levi Onwuzurike needs a breather? Let's put in freaking, DJ Reader, and then we'll just keep switching them out all throughout there. It's a literal three-headed monster, and that's not even including Josh Paschal, and obviously, like I just said, Broderick Martin. The whole point of the matter is that for Levi and Broderick, this is a huge opportunity for them to really start making headways because we really haven't seen a whole lot out of them for the last year or so. Obviously, for other guys like Josh Paschal, we've seen part of him, but he's already kind of got a little bit more ahead of them. So I'm not really including him here, but that's not to say I have forgotten about him. So, Levi and Broderick. Now we're going to get to the last group, which for me is kind of more like I wouldn't necessarily say seeing how they're going to perform, but it's more to see like what they're going to do. And that's the Jared Goff, Jameson Williams connection. Let's understand this. For Lions fans and also for the Lions organization, this is something that we're not only very excited to see grow and continue to get better, but we are expecting big things coming out for this upcoming season. Jared Goff has already showed a very strong chemistry and a very strong, connection with Sam Laporta and Amon-Ra St. Brown. Now Jameson Williams is starting to catch up, and what we've seen in training camp is that chemistry, that connection has really come a long way. But again, that's only been against our guys in practice. It's a whole different kind of situation when you're going up against opposition in practice, and for Jameson Williams, this is going to be a really big opportunity for him. Now, that's not to say he hasn't played in games opposite of other teams before. Obviously, we know that he has. But here's where the difference is different. And here's where the difference is, pardon me. The difference is this is the first time that Jameson Williams is going to be at wide receiver number 2. So this is going to be his first opposition practice in that role, which means, hey, this is going to be a time for him to really shine out. And obviously, the Lions have been really taking a much deeper, much more concerted effort to try and open up the deep passing game. And that's where they're really wanting Jameson Williams to get more opportunities at. That's not where they're only wanting him to get opportunities. They obviously still want him to do short routes, intermediate routes, and everything else. But the deep passing game is something that, from what I've heard in reports, the Lions are really trying their damnedest to open up and add to this training, to the playbook this year. And they've been doing very well at it. So I would expect to see more of that in these joint training camp practices. And here's the thing. If it continues to go well, I'm telling you this right now, this would be a very good early indicator of what we can expect going into the regular season to potentially get. So again, those right there are all the people that I think us Lions fans should really pay attention to. If you count them all up, there's probably about a dozen or so, but they're all in different situations. They all have different things that apply to them as to why we should pay attention to them. But they're all equally important, and every single one of them has a really important value as to what these joint training camp practices are going to provide for them. But you guys let me know, do you guys agree with my list? Do you guys think I missed out on anybody? You guys will let me know. All I ask, please keep it respectful. But having said that, I'm going to end the episode here, and I just want to say thank you all for watching in another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. If you like what you saw, by all means, I highly encourage y'all to watch the next episode, but I also encourage y'all to watch previous content that I've released. If you guys have enjoyed the content, I also want to encourage y'all, please subscribe to the channel. The more subscriptions that we can get, the better the channel has reached, the better the channel has the ability to draw in others, and I'm really thankful for every subscription I can get my hands on. But I also want to encourage y'all that after you subscribe, please make sure you hit that bell notification icon as well, so that way you guys never miss any more content that I push out. Again, the more we're able to get people to come back to the channel without any sort of, prompting, because they have that notification icon on, will allow them to never miss any more content. And again, the more we can get people to do that, the better the channel has the ability to spread and grow on YouTube. I also want to encourage y'all, please, share this content with your Lions friends and family members. That also helps. Share here on YouTube, share it on Twitter, share it on Facebook. Again, the more we can share it, the greater the channel has a reach on YouTube, the greater spread it has, and it also helps out the channel. And I'm thankful for that as well. With that having been said, I hope everybody's enjoyed the content. I hope you all have got something in your life that makes you happy, makes you smile. I hope everybody's having a great day. God bless. And until the next time we meet, I'll see you all in the next episode.